All right, guys, so today in front of me we have Bardstown Bourbon Company's Discovery Series 7. Now, this one is actually not labeled a bourbon. It's actually labeled a blended whiskey. It has 5 different blends inside of it, some of which are very new to their blends, which I will get into a little bit later. I was able to pick up this bottle in Kentucky recently with Jason from the Mash and Drum, Scott from My Bourbon Journey. Really excited to get into this one. I've been a big fan of the Discovery Series. There's been some that have been a miss. Last year's number 6 was pretty good, and really excited to get into this number 7, guys. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so like I said, this one is labeled now as a blended whiskey and not a bourbon. It is a first for that to happen within the Discovery Series. This one does come in at 114.5 proof, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the breakdown now of what's inside this bottle. All right, guys, so the Discovery Series 7 blend starts with a 31% Kentucky whiskey that's aged 12 years. Mash bill is 75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley. Followed up by a 25% Kentucky straight whiskey that's aged 12 years at 78% corn, 10% rye, 12% malted barley. And then for the first time, they've used a Canadian 12-year 100% corn whiskey coming in at 21% of the blend. Followed up by a 15% Indiana rye whiskey that's aged 7 years. Mash bill on that one is 45% corn, 51% rye, and 4% malted barley. And then finishing off is 8% of a Tennessee whiskey that's aged 17 years with a mash bill of 84% corn, 8% rye, and 8% malted barley. So definitely a pretty interesting blend on this one. Again, it's 5 different blends. Again, using that corn whiskey from Canada as a for the first time. So we're going to see what that kind of does to the blend. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get into the nose on this Discovery Series 7. Yeah, so one of the first things that I get, it comes off kind of strong with some baking spices and like some sweet vanilla. Get a little like paprika there further into the glass. I do pick up like a hint of that corn sweetness. It's not like very, very present, but with there being a 21%, 100% corn whiskey in there, that is going to shine through. By no way does that indicate that it's young, but there's a lot of corn presence in this blended whiskey here. Very, very sweet though. That vanilla kind of hinds it a little bit. So, like I said, some paprika, nice caramel there on the nose. But there's like this really nice like sweetness to it, almost like this buttery sugared sweetness, like maybe a little bit of like brown sugars in there. And then there's a little bit of nuttiness that's further into the glass as well, like with that paprika. It's almost like cumin. I wouldn't say it's like a honey roasted peanut, but almost maybe like a walnutish, like a walnut aroma to it. Like I said, it almost smells like some ground cumin. There's some marshmallows sweetness in there too as well. It's a really nice nose. Kind of plays around a little bit, like again, there's that sweetness. There's those baking spices, some caramel, some vanilla. Like some nuttiness in there, like some ground cumin. And then, there's definitely some corn sweetness in there. Again, there is a lot of corn present in this blend, but it's definitely hidden through some of those other aromas that are in there. Let's get to the palate, guys. Cheers. Wow, that is really good. It's like all over the palate, just kind of popping with flavor there. Red fruits is one of the first things that I got on the front of the palate. Then like the rye spice from this one definitely starts to sit there on the middle of the palate. A little bit of citrus notes there on the sides, like a slight bit of like lemon. Then into the back, especially off the first sip, like there's some vanilla that kind of flows through. A little bit of pepper from that rye as it goes down. It's a medium to long finish. It's my first sip of the day, so really nice first sip. Just a lot of like bursting flavor there. They said on the front of the palate, that sweetness, rye spices starting to dig in and burn a little bit. Nice kind of peppery, long. It's definitely a long finish on this one. Off the first sip though, I didn't get a lot of corn influence like I thought it was going to, with it being a pretty high percent of the blend. Didn't get it really at all. Let's get a second sip, guys. Wow. So this one has a lot going on. So I pick up this, like, on the front of the palate, there's like this strawberry raspberry jam, and like, but there's like this hint of like milk chocolate that kind of sits on the front of the palate there on the tip of the tongue. It's almost like one of those little chocolate bites that have the like the chocolate, and then like the raspberry strawberry like inside. Middle of the palate, a little bit of like lemon citrus there on the sides. Rye spices kind of sit there on the top of the tongue, flow through into the finish with like this sweet vanilla that kind of flows through. The vanilla like starts on the front, misses the middle, but then continues along the back with some of that like black peppery finish, maybe from that Indiana rye. Wow. And it's definitely it's a medium to long finish, definitely a little bit on the longer side, but the flavors just kind of sit there and just saturate. That's really good. That's really, really good. Let's get into another one, guys. I got enough for two more. Yeah, so like there's this so on the middle of the palate, there's almost like this little like earthy note there as well, along with those rye spices. Rye spice definitely dominates kind of like the center of the palate. Don't pick up any corn sweetness. But again, on the front of that palate, it's like this strawberry, raspberry jam. But then like there's this hint of milk chocolate. It reminds me of like the little chocolate squares that have like the chocolate and like the raspberry or strawberry inside. Love that. It's so good. The sweetness up front and the bold spiciness in the middle. That sweetness kind of flows through again with the vanilla, and then that black pepper kind of flowing through. And then like on the finish, it's almost like some turmeric or something that's like that's sitting there on the back of the palate. I actually take turmeric, so that it has a very distinct flavor, and I start to pick that up there like on the finish as it's going down. I rarely pick that up in anything, but it's so good and so unique. This is very, very well blended. Very well blended. Let's get a last sip, guys. Cheers. So what I like about this one is there's consistencies throughout sip to sip, but yet it almost continuously evolves into something else. Like you get those continuous flavors, but then there's like something that kind of just like pops up, like a little bit of clove there on the middle of the palate with those earthy notes and those rye spices. Just the slightest bit of clove. Back into the back of the palate is like that vanilla that kind of flows through, the black pepper, and like the slightest hint of like turmeric. On the front of the palate, it's sweetness, milk chocolate, raspberry, strawberry jam. I mean, this one's all over the flavor wheel. I don't get any nuttiness really like I did on the nose. I don't pick up any of those corn notes on the palate like I did on the nose. Very, very different from the nose into the palate. I mean, there are some similarities, but not much. This is a hell of a blend here. I do eventually want to compare this one to the Batch 6 just to see the differences. Look at the blends, compare them. But this Discovery Series 7 is something to write about. This is probably one of the better whiskeys I've had so far this year. Consistency, complexity, long lingering finish, some flavors that I don't really normally pick up off of whiskeys, bourbons, ryes, blended whiskeys. It's just a lot of very unique flavors, and maybe that's kind of what they were shooting for with this Discovery Series Batch 7. But overall, this is hands down probably one of the better whiskeys I've tried this year. amazing job from blending here from Bardstown Bourbon Company. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Guys, do yourselves a favor. If you see Discovery Series Batch 7 out there, grab it, buy it, enjoy it. It's a hell of a blended whiskey. Bardstown Bourbon Company did a stellar job blending this batch, especially with all, those 5 different blends that are inside this, those 2 Kentucky whiskeys, that 100% corn whiskey, that MGP rye, and then that Tennessee whiskey that's in there. I can only imagine how long it takes to blend something like this, but what they did with this bottle right here, in my opinion, is an absolute home run. It's a killer freaking blend. Just bursting with flavor. I mean, the entire flavor wheel is basically in this one bottle. Everything you would want from a whiskey, let alone a blended whiskey. But overall, man, I mean, what a fantastic bottle and blending job there from Bardstown Bourbon Company. So guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.